So I'm out here in the shop for a few minutes this morning. I'm gonna see if I can turn this apple juice container into the base form for the boys' Gauntlet. Now what I would usually do is actually design this thing for real, build a form, heat up plastic and on a vacuum former, suck the plastic down around a form to make the exact design I want, but we don't have the time and money for that. This is a fan film, got a couple weeks, so it's really about using what you have around you. So I may be able to utilize some of the basic form here and make a good enough looking gauntlet that will hold this light and that we can use in our film. So I'm gonna give it about 15 minutes here and see what I can come up with. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is cut a hole in the bottom and then cut off this piece here. So to get this thing started, in order to get the snips in, you can do one of two things. You can drill a couple holes and then get your cutting tool in there and cut it out. Or if you don't have a drill, you can use a hammer and a screwdriver. And what you do is you just put the screwdriver on like this and you hammer onto the head of the screwdriver and you cut a slit in the plastic. Okay, so here we go. I've got a hole in the bottom and I cut off everything that I didn't want. So now I'm gonna start cutting it here and start figuring out how I might want to wrap it around the forearm. Now I used an old pair of tin snips, metal cutting snips for this. If you're a kid and you're using your dad's tools, don't use your dad's good snips because it'll dull them and mess them up. You want to use an old pair. Okay, so I've got about 5 minutes into this right now. I'm gonna go grab a bite to eat and come back and give it another 10 minutes. Okay, I'm back. It's Saturday morning, August 25th. Just grabbed a little bite to eat, got a cup of coffee, and I'm just gonna spend a few more minutes seeing if I can turn this into a quick and dirty gauntlet. And really, I'm not gonna plan on showing any tight shots of this in the movie. It really just needs to hold the light. If I continue with the script that I have right now, I've got the boy is out in the woods in the dark, and this comes into play where he's lighting his way with his gauntlet. So it really just needs to be an interesting shape. I'm not going to see anything up really, not going to see it up close in a lot of light. Okay, when you're doing this stuff, do it as a subtractive process. So take out a little bit at a time, see what you can fit, and then take out a little bit more. If you take out too much in the beginning, you may lose something that was potentially useful. So maybe I can try and turn it around and put this on my wrist. Let's do that. Okay, so now we've got something that's working a little bit better. It's pinching into my wrist a lot, but I can cut it out a little bit more. I'm not sure if I like the shape. I mean, it might be kind of like a dumb shape. I don't know if I like it, but I'm gonna try. That's really what it's about. So it's got enough room there that I could fit the light into it, which is really all I need is a lit gauntlet. Maybe I can put a couple buttons or something in it as well. So when I was talking about a subtractive process, that's what I mean. See, now I'm cutting away little slivers, just cutting away a little bit at a time, so you don't want to eat away too much from the beginning. You want to slowly, gradually take off more and more until it fits the way you want it to. Okay, so there we go. We've got a potential base shape for a gauntlet. And there's enough room in there where I can put the light underneath and have it pop out just a little bit, but also enough to recess it inside. So I'm not really sure I like the shape, but it's just an example of trying to utilize what you have available to you to get stuff done on the cheap. It's better to produce something out of junk than produce nothing at all. Okay, so now the question becomes how to fasten it. I mean, obviously that shape's not going to work. We might be able to make that shape work, right? But it's not going to work from that direction, so we've got to cut all this off and find a way to form it around the bottom. Let's do that now. Okay, my 15 minutes is up messing with this, but you can see where I was going with it. I'm not really liking how it fits on the bottom. I think I can deal with the top. It's a little bit of a strange shape, not very Star Warsy, but I think in the dark it'll work, and it holds the light in, diffuses the light a little bit. I can, you know, push it, turn it on and off. So, not terrible, not great. Then once it gets down to the bottom of the arm, it's just gonna go flat, and then I'm gonna use these pieces to somehow wrap together and fasten it, and then paint it. Now this plastic doesn't hold paint that great, but if you scratch it up, it'll work. And the other problem is these are really annoying labels they put on here. You don't really want to paint those, so I'm gonna have to get some sandpaper and sand this paper label off. And then, yeah, I think I can make it work. Whether or not I'll actually use this, I don't know, but this is a good way if you want to get into building props and costumes. Before you start working with flat sheet plastic, you can actually try and find forms that already exist in juice containers and, you know, detergent containers and whatnot, and find a way to cut out that shape and use it for the piece you want. Okay, I just spent a few minutes grinding on that with a piece of coarse sandpaper here. And these labels are particularly annoying because they have two layers, and the top one is a very flaky scrap. Anyway, I think that's good enough. Aging and weathering is good on this thing, so once I paint it, it'll be fine. Okay, I want the light to be mounted inside of this piece. It's a little bit too thick. It sticks up a little bit above the edge, but that's okay. Now I'm going to use a really high-tech method to put this light inside of the Gauntlet. It's called duct tape. So now what I'm going to do is figure out where I want the lights, and I'm going to draw a line around the shape where I want the light to be, and I will mask that off, and then I'm going to paint it, and the section when I pull the mask tape off will still be clear. Now that doesn't scream Star Wars form language to me, but I think once you see the whole character, yeah, we're just gonna have to make it work, you know. It takes money and specific design time, fabrication time to get exact Star Wars form language. Now if this was a key part of the movie where we were really showing it up close, I'd have to do something different, but the fact that it's just a secondary piece on this kid's arm and he's just using a light in the dark, I think, you know, the light will glint off of the shapes and it'll work good enough. Okay, so I simply applied some masking tape and turned the light on and traced it. And now I'm gonna use a razor knife to cut out the excess and paint this. Okay, well, this was just gonna be a little 15 to 30 minute test, but I guess I decided to go ahead and commit to building this Gauntlet. I mean, it's almost done. I just need to put a few straps on it and call it done. All I had was black primer, so now it's primed and drying, and now I haven't had any time to do any art direction for this costume. I know the color palette's gonna lean towards forest greens and browns and stuff, so the colors that I have on hand are a London gray, a hunter green, and whatever this kind of satin Eden green. I think I'm gonna go with this. This is not a very high-end prop, so usually brighter colors will draw your eye to it. I think a darker one might hide the fact that it's a little bit cheap. Okay, I think this is done. Now I didn't paint this yet because I'm gonna either glue or do something with straps here. And so I don't want paint in the way of where I'm trying to work with fastening. So once I figure out my straps, I'll come back and paint this last little section. Another little trick I do is I'm probably gonna paint this again. So sometimes if I have small little masking pieces like this, I'll just stick them on the can, peel them off, put it back on. Okay, so here's the thing. In 1 hour, probably less than an hour, we've got a lit Gauntlet. Yeah, I don't know if I like it, but it's an hour, it's a test. It'll probably work in the dark. We'll just have to see. I mean, it's a piece of trash. So in less than an hour, we've got a Gauntlet with a light in it. Now, it's still not looking Star Warsy enough to me. So I'll have to figure out some more buttons, some more details on it. Maybe diffuse these lights a little bit more so they look like more like that instead of 3 single lights. And then I got to put the straps on it. But from a distance and going into the woods at night in the dark, I mean, that might work. And it was $10 and an hour of my time. Okay, the next thing I like to do is go into my parts bins and just pick out some potential pieces that'll work on here to make this more interesting. This is just the base layer. We need to put some details on it, put some trim around this light, etc. So the problem you can get into with this is none of this is Star Wars form language. Like, you need to find the specific shapes that like they used in their outfit, and I don't see any of it here. So that's the problem you gotta be mindful of. You can't just throw a bunch of gunk on here that doesn't look like Star Wars shapes. It's got to be a Star Wars form language. And we're kind of off to a bad start trying to use an apple cider can, because that's nothing really. I mean, maybe this corner could be Star Wars, like that. I think Boba Fett's Gauntlet, which I don't have any reference on me, but I think his is kind of square in the back. That's not Star Wars form language as far as I can tell. I've never seen anything like that. But with a glove or something cuffed up to it, it should be alright. So yeah, now it's just about finding some details and finishing this thing off. I've got a bag of straps here. So I'm gonna go into my bag of straps and put a couple, just like some 3/4 inch webbing or some Velcro on the back, and call this one done. Okay, another way to make really crappy, cheap looking forms is to use some thin plastic and then heat it up with the heat gun, put on some leather gloves, and maybe get a piece of wood or something, and then bend the plastic down around your form. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. It's a really low budget, fast, I don't have a vacuum former type of approach, but I might be able to make some little shapes like this work. So yeah, this was really just a test, but I just sculpted a quick piece and then used the heat gun and used some thin plastic and hand formed it, which looks really crappy up close, but from a distance and in the dark, as long as, you know, it catches some light, you can get away with it. So what I can do if I like this shape is I can put this right here, draw a line around it, and then cut that out, and then from the inside I can push this shape up through, and then I can put some glue or rivets or whatever I want on the inside there. Probably just be glue, and then I'd have a nice form popping out of this one. I'm not really sure this is going to give me the look I want, but it's kind of a fun project, a fun problem to try and solve. So now I'm kind of in fab mode for a few hours, chilling in the garage on a Saturday. I'm going to get something. So it will be a gauntlet that lights up with some shapes on it. I just don't know if I'll actually like it or if it'll look Star Warsy enough. But I'm going to finish it either way. So I'm thinking something like that, just to get some shape on here, and then I'll put some type of a faceplate around the light that sticks out a little bit out of a piece of plastic, just to give a little piece of trim. Okay, so now I've cut my hole out, and I go on the inside and push this up through. Okay, I'm gonna break, that shape is not very Star Warsy, so what I'm gonna do is break this up with some lines right here, and then some angular shapes. And I might even leave a gap in it so I can slide a gel up in there to filter the light a different color. So through this angle will be a little gap. Yeah, just put a couple big shapes on there, a couple small shapes. You just need something to give it some shape. And then I'll have a faceplate over the light and a nice strap, and it's almost done. So now I'm going to make a faceplate that's going to cover up this rough shape. those shapes are definitely in Star Wars on the Death Star and stuff like that, but it's looking a little too open and basic for a Gauntlet. So what I think I'm gonna do is cut out a faceplate that fits here, it kind of curves around, and then it has a couple bars here and here. Breaks that up a little bit, gives it like 3 panels. I think that'll help. Thank you, Pete Ranzani, for the plastic. You are remembered. So I think what I'm going to do on this is just peel this tape off. Now that I have my shape design on here, I'm just going to stick the tape down to my plastic and then X-Acto knife right on the plastic. So see, that's the problem with using this cheap recycled juice bottles and stuff, plastic, is it doesn't hold paint very well. I pulled off this masking tape. It took the primer and the paint with it. So these won't last very long. The paint will end up flaking off and chipping, and when it flexes, it'll just pop off. But if you're doing it for a couple days shoot, you paint it, you use it, and it's done. It works. Well, those hand cuts look pretty crappy. But I'm never gonna like get up here and investigate them, you know? It'll just be like back in here. You won't even really notice. Well, I didn't want to, but I had to end up riveting these, and I did it in a big hurry. As you can tell, they aren't even square. That's not like me. I've been on this thing most of the day. I need to just finish it. Okay, here it is with the first layer of grime. You can see I just went down in the cracks. And then put a few smudges here and there. One thing I forgot to do, I was going to cover up these rivets before I did the aging, and I forgot. So I may or may not get to covering those rivets up. I kind of just want to be done with this thing. But I don't like the look of them. I covered that one and it looks way better. So I should probably take the time to go ahead and do that. Just use a little, this little brush and some raw umber. You can use whatever colors you want, black, burnt sienna. I tend to like raw umber. It's a good, dirty, soily look. So yeah, we'll let that dry, do a second pass, and then we'll start putting some highlights and scratches. Okay, here it is after the first pass of grime down in the cracks. And then we're just gonna start hitting these higher edged areas and scratching it up and chipping the paint. Okay, I think that's good enough. Okay, I think that's probably good enough for this. Scratched it up pretty good around the edges on the high sides. Let's take it out in the light and see what it looks like. Okay, so this Gauntlet prop is done. Ended up taking a little over a day actually, but I think it will work. Got a little Velcro strap. I might put some black fabric in here. For now, I'm gonna call it done. I'm not gonna get the camera this close to it either. So it should be fine at a real big distance, you know, when it's just moving through the frame and stuff. Catch some light, some shape, something interesting on his arm, and a functional light. There you go. Gauntlet prop, done.